Hey guys, tonight we step straight into a medieval town, and it's not exactly like those polished movies where every cobblestone looks freshly scrubbed. Right now, picture yourself ducking under a low wooden gate, the kind with iron nails hammered in uneven rows, and suddenly you're swallowed by a street that is alive. Smoke, shouting, goes underfoot, and a smell that hits you harder than a New York subway platform in midsummer. You probably won't survive this, but don't worry, that's kind of fun of imagining it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and the time where you are, so I know where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle deeper into the town, feeling every pair of eyes on you. The road under your boots is mud churned with straw, and something you really hope is just horse droppings. On either side, timber-framed houses lean together at odd angles, almost like they're gossiping about you. Upper floors jut forward, shadowing the lane below, so the whole street feels narrow and dim, even though it's midday. Somewhere above, laundry flaps between buildings, trying to dry in the smoky breeze. A vendor waves you over with one hand, the other holding a basket of something that might be apples or might be shriveled turnips. His smile reveals exactly 2 teeth, but he's enthusiastic. You mumble something polite and keep walking because you've spotted a man with a live goose under his arm arguing loudly with a woman balancing a bucket of fish on her hip. The goose seems to be winning. Historians still argue whether medieval markets were truly this chaotic or whether our modern accounts exaggerate for effect, but almost every surviving record mentions the same thing. Noise. Barkers shout about their wares. Hammers ring out from blacksmith stalls. And somewhere, a drunk man sings a song about ale that hasn't aged well. You catch only a few words, but one line seems suspiciously close to blame it on the mead. Yes, even centuries ago, people liked to blame the alcohol. The smells, though, that's what gets you. Roasting meat drifts from a nearby cook shop, and your stomach growls, but the odor is quickly drowned by the tang of tan leather, the bite of smoke from wet firewood, and something sour you suspect is a public latrine. People in the Middle Ages didn't exactly have city sanitation figured out. Chamber pots were emptied right onto the street. Imagine walking past someone's upstairs window, hearing a splash, and realizing you've just been hit with, let's call it medieval rain. A boy darts between your legs chasing a stray chicken, nearly knocking you over. You're not the only one stumbling. Peasants jostle past, clutching baskets of onions or ruffle cloth, and merchants in slightly better clothes stride with purpose, jingling keys at their belts. Status shows in subtle ways, shoes, for instance. Pointier tips meant higher rank. You glance at your own boots and realize they're looking very round compared to the knife-sharp toes passing you by. You duck aside to avoid a cart piled with cabbages and find yourself pressed against a rough plaster wall of a tavern. From inside comes the deep, rhythmic thump of a drum and the clatter of mugs on wooden tables. A barmaid bursts out the door, laughing, a sloshing jug balanced expertly on her hip. She winks at you before disappearing down an alley. For a second, you think maybe medieval life isn't so bad, until you notice the drunk staggering after her, belching like a foghorn. Romance, apparently, is timeless. The marketplace has its wonders, though. You pause at a stall where a man sells brightly colored ribbons imported from Italy. The dyes are so vivid they almost glow, and you learn quickly they cost more than you'll earn in a month. Another table displays spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, all smelling like wealth itself. In fact, peppercorns were sometimes used like currency. Imagine paying your rent with a handful of seasoning. Not exactly Apple Pay, but it worked. A juggler sets up on the corner, tossing wooden balls to lure a crowd. He cracks jokes in the local dialect, most of which go over your head, but the laughter of townsfolk tells you they're funny. He drops a ball once and mutters something probably rude, then recovers with bows so dramatic you can't help but clap. 3 kids near you clap too, then instantly stop and glare at you like you violated some unwritten rule of medieval coolness. Nearby, a town crier unfurls a parchment and bellows news from the Lord's manor. Taxes are going up again. Shocking, right? The crier's voice booms so loudly you feel in your chest. People groaned but gnawed. There's no arguing with the scroll. In a world before newspapers, this was how gossip and official orders spread. If you missed the crier, you missed the memo. You edge closer to a stall piled with bread. The loaves are round, hard, and dusted with flour. The baker, arms wide up to the elbows, slaps one down in front of you. It's heavy enough to be a weapon. You're tempted to joke about it, but the man's scowl suggests he's heard every stale bread pun in existence. Truth is, most people ate this coarse bread every single day. Soft white bread was reserved for the rich, almost like dessert. That's right, bread privilege was real. As you wander further, the crowd thickens. A man on stilts lumbers past, performing tricks while children shriek with laughter. Somewhere, a minstrel strums a lute, singing about a knight who fell in love with a miller's daughter. The melody is hauntingly sweet until he hits a sour note, then mutters, "Curse these strings," in a tone even you recognize. Instruments break, voices crack, and not every medieval performance was Broadway material. You pause in front of a cloth merchant's stall. Rolls of wool, linen, and even rare silks draped from wooden beams. The merchant strokes the silk like it's his beloved cat and hisses prices that make your eyes water. Silk was a sign of luxury imported all the way from Asia along trade routes so long and dangerous that owning even a scarf meant you'd made it. You touch a corner before he slaps your hand away. Apparently, silk is for looking, not fondling. As the afternoon sun tilts lower, shadows stretch across the market, and you notice torches being lit. Flames flicker, smoke curls upward, and the noise softens into a background hum. A little girl offers you a wooden toy carved into the shape of a horse. It's rough, splintery, but her grin is so wide you almost buy it. Almost. Then you remember you've got no medieval coins in your pocket. Rookie mistake. By now your head is buzzing from the mix of smells, sounds, and sights. The medieval town feels alive, almost overwhelming, and you sense you've only scratched the surface. Behind the stalls lie twisting alleys, smoky hearths, and lives unfolding in rhythm with bells and seasons. Tomorrow, you'll have to dress like them, eat like them, and maybe even find a place to sleep. For now, though, you take one last look at the goose under the arm of that shouting man. It's still winning, and step cautiously onward. You wait till the scrape of wool against your skin, and the first thing you realize is this. Medieval clothing is not made for comfort. It's scratchy, heavy, and layered in ways that make you feel like a badly wrapped burrito. You tug at the rough fabric of your tunic and wonder how anyone managed to work, eat, and breathe in these things. Meanwhile, the wealthy parade through the streets wearing fabric so fine they almost shimmer in the dim light, and you can practically hear them saying, "Peasant chic isn't really my thing." Clothes in this world scream status louder than a modern designer handbag. A simple homespun little tunic? That marks you as one of the crowd. Add dyed fabric, maybe a stripe of blue or green, and suddenly people treat you with more respect. Nobles, on the other hand, strut in silks imported from Italy or even the far reaches of Asia. Historians still argue whether sumptuary laws, rules that dictated what each class could wear, were strictly enforced or just ignored when convenient. Either way, you quickly learn that fashion here is more about survival in the social jungle than keeping warm. Take your shoes, for example. If your toes are round and stubby, congratulations, you're basically announcing your low status. If they're long and pointed, so long you could trip over them, you're an elite company. One chronicler even joked that nobles' shoes were so long they had to be tied to their knees with chains. Imagine trying to run from an angry goose in those. Spoiler, you wouldn't get far. You try adjusting the wool belt cinched at your waist, but it just digs in deeper. Somewhere nearby, a group of women gather around a laundry line, their dresses covered in aprons and kerchiefs. You notice the tiny details. The hems are shorter for working women. Skirts hike just enough to avoid the muck, while wealthy ladies glide by with trailing fabric that probably requires 3 servants just to keep it out of the mud. Practicality was not part of high fashion. Quirky detail? Well, some ladies in the later Middle Ages plucked their hairlines to achieve the perfect high forehead look. Picture noblewomen carefully tweezing away at their hairline, so their brows began halfway up their skulls. It was considered elegant, intellectual, and Frankly, a little alien to modern eyes. You reach up, touch your own hairline, and immediately decide you'll keep your natural look. Thanks. As you shuffle through the crowd, you notice hats everywhere. Caps, hoods, veils, coifs. Every head seems wrapped or covered. In some towns, going bareheaded was as scandalous as walking outside today without pants. And hats weren't just fashion. They were decorations. A tall hat with fur trim? That screams wealthy merchant. A simple wool hood pulled over your shoulders? That's everyday worker gear. The church even weighed in, sometimes scolding women whose veils look too fancy, because heaven forbid your headdress outshines your humility. And speaking of the church, imagine the grip they had on fashion choices. Certain fabrics and colors were reserved for nobility, because the church preached modesty but also wanted to keep clear social hierarchies. Purple dye especially was considered royal. Ancient traditions carried right into the Middle Ages. The irony? If you spilled wine on your tunic, you'd have the forbidden purple look for free. Of course, you'd still smell like a tavern floor, so maybe not the best plan. You pass a merchant's stall and brush your fingers over a bolt of linen. It's cool, smooth, and worlds apart from your itchy wool tunic. Linen was the undergarment fabric of choice, worn closest to the skin. It could be washed more easily, which was crucial in an era where hygiene wasn't exactly trending. Over that came layers of wool for warmth, and if you were lucky or rich, silk for flair. Every layer told the world who you were before you even opened your mouth. One group of young men struts past, their sleeves so long they drag on the ground. They smirk at each other, clearly enjoying the attention. Long sleeves weren't practical, but they were fashionable. The quirk here is that sometimes sleeves were detachable, meaning you could swap them out like modern accessories. Imagine showing off at a party by dramatically unclipping your sleeves and handing them to a friend. It sounds silly, but in a world without sneakers or TikTok, this was cutting-edge style flexing. Your eyes wander to a lady on horseback, her gown trailing almost to the ground. She wears a veil so sheer it seems afloat, pinned carefully to a jewel circlet. The air of superiority is strong, but you can't help noticing how impractical the whole outfit is for someone navigating cobblestone streets and muddy markets. Still, the message is clear. She doesn't need to worry about dirt or work, and that's the point. Of course, not all fashion choices were voluntary. The poor didn't pick wool because it was chic. They wore it because it was all they had. Clothes were patched, re-dyed, and handed down until they were more stitches than fabric. You glance down at your own tunic again and realize you blend in well at the bottom rung of society. No one's mistaking you for nobility anytime soon. The real kicker? Laundry. Washing clothes was a brutal task. Women soaked linens and lye, or even urine to bleach them, then pounded them with paddles by riversides. You suddenly feel grateful for your modern washing machine and the fact you don't have to shout, "Can someone bring more urine for laundry day?" at your neighbors. Historians still argue whether medieval people cared as much about fashion as we assume, or those elaborate manuscripts just overemphasize elite. But standing here, feeling the scratch of wool and the burn of envy as silk glides by, you know appearances mattered. A lot. Clothing was language, silently shouting your place in the hierarchy. As dusk falls, lanterns glow against deep blue fabric cloaks. You catch a glimpse of embroidery twinkling with gold thread. The wealthy vanish into homes where their gowns will be carefully hung or folded by servants. Meanwhile, you tug your cloak tighter, scratch at your itchy tunic, and try not to think about lice, a problem so common even kings complained about it. Still, there's a strange charm to it all. The swirl of colors, the clash of fabrics, the endless parade of headgear. At a medieval runway show, just without the paparazzi, you breathe in the smoky night air, adjust your belt once more, and trudge on, already wondering what tomorrow will throw at you. If you thought itchy wool was bad, wait until you meet the barber surgeon with his rusty tools. You wake up at the start, not because of an alarm clock, those don't exist, but because the deep clang of a church bell rattles the air like someone's banging on the inside of your skull. It's dawn, though the sun itself seems reluctant to climb above the rooftops. You sit up, straw crunching beneath you, and brush off a mouse that scurries away like it just lost its leash. Medieval mornings don't exactly come with coffee and Wi-Fi. They come with bells. The bell rings again, echoing across town, and you realize this isn't just to annoy sleepy travelers like you. The church bell is the heartbeat of the town, telling everyone when to wake, when to work, when to pray. Without wristwatches or glowing smartphone screens, people depend on those tones the way we depend on notification pings. Only, instead of ding, you got mail, it's clang, you got mass. Historians still argue whether the average person was as obsessed with precise time as we are today. Some say medieval people only thought in rough blocks of the day, dawn, noon, dusk, night. Others insist the bells and sundials created a surprising sense of structure, even in small villages. Either way, you quickly realize you're living by sound and light now. If the rooster crows, you're up. If the shadows stretch long, it's supper. If you hear the bell toll at midnight, you're probably sneaking somewhere you shouldn't be. You stretch, yawning, and step outside into the cool morning air. The street is already stirring. Smoke curls from chimneys, dogs bark, and someone shouting at a stubborn donkey that refuses to move. You watch as a woman hauls water from the communal well, balancing the heavy bucket with practiced ease. You try to imagine lugging that weight every single morning before breakfast. Suddenly, your complaints about dragging a trash bin to the curb feel embarrassingly small. Daily life begins early, and for most people, it means work. If you're a farmer, you're out in the fields by sunrise. If you're a craftsman, you're opening your shop shutters. If you're a servant, you're probably already running errands for your master. And if you're nobility, well, you're still asleep, waiting for a servant to bring you bread and ale in bed. Yes, ale for breakfast. Forget orange juice. Fermented grain was a safer drink. Quirky fact. Medieval folks measured time in canonical hours, the schedule of church prayers. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. Sounds fancy, but for you, it basically means bells ringing at odd times while you're trying to nap. Imagine living in a world where your daily planner is dictated by monks chanting Latin. Talk about outsourcing your Google Calendar. You follow the crowd into the marketplace square, which looks different in the morning. Bakers pull steaming loaves from ovens, and the smell makes your stomach growl louder than a bear waking from hibernation. You buy a hunk of bread, so hard you could probably patch a roof with it, then chew until your jaw feels like it's run a marathon. Still, the warmth fills you, and you can't help smiling. People talk as they work, exchanging gossip. The Lord Steward is raising rent again. Did you hear about Margaret's cow giving birth? I swear I saw a comet last night. It's a sign. The rhythm of life is steady, familiar, and deeply tied to nature. Seasons matter more than days. Spring means planting. Summer means harvesting. Autumn means storing food. Winter means praying you don't starve. The medieval year is less about exact dates and more about cycles, repeating endlessly. Still, time wasn't always consistent. One quirky problem. An hour in medieval Europe wasn't always 60 minutes. In some places, they divided daylight into 12 hours, no matter how long the sun was up. So in summer, an hour might last 75 minutes, while in winter, it might be only 45. Imagine trying to schedule a meeting. Let's meet in 2 hours. Summer hours or winter hours? It's a wonder anyone got anything done. You glance up at a sundial mounted on the church wall. The shadow points vaguely toward a mark, but clouds drift past and the line wobbles. Not exactly Swiss precision. No wonder bells ruled the town. Monks with water clocks and candle clocks try to keep things regulated, but even those weren't perfect. A candle clock, for instance, burned at uneven rates depending on draft or wax quality. You think about your digital watch and suddenly want to kiss it in gratitude. As the morning stretches on, children run errands, fetching firewood, chasing animals, carrying messages. You spot a boy trying to count on his fingers, but he gets confused after 10 and starts over. Education wasn't exactly universal. For most kids, the rhythms of life, milking cows, kneading bread, chopping wood, were their curriculum. Books were rare, expensive, and chained in churches like they might sprout legs and wander off. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants lived joyless, grinding lives, or whether they found small pleasures in this rhythm. Some accounts paint peasants as exhausted and oppressed. Others suggest they had more holidays than modern workers, thanks to the church calendar packed with feast days. You think about your own job, your limited vacation days, and wonder if, bizarrely, a serf might actually out-holiday you. Now that's a depressing thought. By midday, the town hums like a beehive. The bell rings again, sects the noon prayer, and you wipe sweat from your brow. People pause their work to mumble prayers or simply rest. Lunch is simple: bread, cheese, maybe a vegetable stew, if you're lucky. Nobles, of course, dine on roasted meat, spiced wine, and delicacies like swan. You chew your bread and think about how unfair life is. Though, to be fair, have you ever tried swan? People said it was tough and gamey. Maybe your bread isn't such a tragedy after all. As the shadows lengthen, you notice a woman hanging herbs by her door, not just for cooking, but for keeping away evil spirits. Or so she believes. Lavender, sage, rosemary. Fragrances fill the air. Practical, too, since they help mask the less charming odors wafting from the streets. Some traditions blur the line between medicine, superstition, and daily life. You smile, realizing that in a world without deodorant, herbs were the medieval body spray. By evening, the bell tolls again. People shuffle home, animals corralled, shutters closed. The town exhales into dusk. You sink onto a bench, weary but oddly content. The rhythm of bells, sun, and seasons has carried you through the day. You realize time here isn't something you control. It's something you follow like a tide. No alarms, no deadlines, no email reminders. Just bells and shadows. And as darkness deepens, you wonder, can you adjust to this rhythm? Or would you, like most modern souls, go mad without your digital calendar? You scratch at the straw clinging to your sleeve, sigh, and think, at least I don't have to wake up tomorrow for a Zoom call. The smell of roasting meat lingers in the air long before you reach the cook shop. Your stomach twists in anticipation, though you're half afraid of what you might actually get. Food in the Middle Ages is a gamble, sometimes hearty and delicious, other times, let's just say, culinary roulette. You start with the basics. Bread. It's everywhere, stacked in round loaves on wooden stalls, carried under arms, cradled like treasure. Only problem? It's not the fluffy, golden stuff you know. This bread is dense, coarse, and sometimes laced with ground peas or beans to stretch the flour. You bite into a hunk, and it's like gnawing on a brick. On the upside, if bandits attack, you could probably use it as a weapon. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants ate better than we give them credit for. Some sources suggest their diet, though monotonous, was healthier than ours. Lots of whole grains, beans, and vegetables. Others argue famine, moldy bread, and nutrient gaps left people underfed and prone to disease. You chew slowly, thinking about kale smoothies and wondering which side you'd rather believe. Of course, bread comes with a catch: ergot. This fungus sometimes infected rye and caused hallucinations, convulsions, even death. Entire villages stumbled around like they'd been to the wildest music festival of their lives. But really, it was just tainted grain. Quirky tidbit? Some theories even suggest ergot poisoning played a role in witchcraft panics. People hallucinating visions they swore were demonic. You stare at your loaf and wonder if the goose you saw earlier really was winning that argument, or if the bread's already working on you. You wash it down with ale, because here's the kicker. Water isn't safe. Wells are shallow. Rivers are contaminated, and no one's invented chlorine yet. So everyone, from toddlers to grandparents, drinks small ale, a weak beer with just enough alcohol to kill bacteria. You take a cautious sip and grimace. It's flat, warm, and tastes vaguely like sour bread, but it won't give you dysentery. Modern health blogs talk about gut cleanses, but this is not what they mean. At the richer end of town, nobles sip wine imported from France or Spain. Expensive, rare, and sometimes sweetened with honey. You're not invited to that table, though, so you wander to a pie cellar instead. The man plops a steaming meat pie in your hands. The crust is thick, tough, and clearly meant more as a container than a delicacy. You break it open and the smell hits: meat, onions, maybe spices if you're lucky. You take a bite. Not bad. until you crunch something suspiciously like bone. You swallow quickly, praying it wasn't rat. Food varies by class, and you notice it instantly. The poor eat pottage, basically a thick stew of oats, beans, and whatever vegetables are on hand. Day after day, the same bubbling pot, topped up with scraps until it resembles edible swamp. The wealthy feast on roast venison, exotic spices, sugar from the east. Even peacocks serve with their feathers reattached for show. It's dinner theater, medieval edition. One odd detail, they loved spices, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, pepper. Spices were so valuable that they were practically currency. A single sack of peppercorns could pay your rent. Imagine going to the landlord with, "Here's a spoonful of cinnamon, now leave me alone." Maybe not a bad deal. You pass a group of children gnawing carrots like candy. Vegetables are common, though no one's talking about kale salads. Onions, leeks, beans, cabbage. That's the everyday lineup. Fruit shows up too, mostly apples and pears, dried or stewed, when fresh isn't available. Exotic fruits like oranges? Forget it, unless you're dining with royalty. Then there's meat. Pork dominates, with pigs being cheap and easy to keep. Cows are more valuable alive from milk and plowing, so beef is rarer. Chickens, geese, and fish fill in the gaps. On fast days, when the church forbids meat, fish take center stage. That means salted herring, dried cod, and sometimes fish pies that smell like a dockyard left in the sun. You pinch your nose and remind yourself people swore by it. Historians still argue whether peasants were actually half-starved most of the time or whether they had enough calories from grain. Famine certainly struck, wiping out entire regions. But in normal years, your biggest problem might not be lack of food, it's monotony. Imagine eating stew for breakfast, stew for lunch, stew for dinner. By day 3, you probably trade your soul for a slice of pizza. Quirky snack? Roasted chestnuts, honey cakes, or even sugared almonds at fairs. Street food existed long before food trucks. You watch a man roast nuts over a brazier, the smell drifting through the market. Your stomach growls again, and you drop a few coins into his hand. The warm chestnuts crack under your teeth, sweet and smoky. For a moment, you forget about stale bread and sketchy pies. Drinks other than ale? There's cider from apples, mead from honey, and for the desperate, watered-down wine. Nobles sometimes sip spice wine, called hippocras, warm with sugar and cinnamon. It sounds delicious, but unless you suddenly inherit a manor, you're sticking with ale. You sigh and raise your mug, muttering, to surviving one more medieval meal. As dusk falls, kitchens glow with hearth fires. Families huddle around pots, the smell of herbs and onions filling the air. Someone stirs a stew, someone tears bread, someone pours ale. It's simple, repetitive, but comforting in its own way. You stretch, full at last, though you're not entirely sure what you ate. Medieval food might not earn Michelin stars, but it keeps you alive. And alive is what you need to stay, because tomorrow you're due at the barber surgeon's shop, where dinner might not be your biggest worry. Your stomach still feels uneasy from that meat pie, but there's no time to dwell on it. A sharp pain in your side reminds you of something worse. Sooner or later, you're going to need a doctor. Only, in this world, doctor means barber surgeon, a man with rusty tools, a steady hand, and more courage than training. You push open the door to his shop. The smell hits first, iron sweat, herbs. On one side, a man sharpens razors, preparing to shave someone's beard. On the other, another man sits pale and trembling, arm outstretched while the barber readies a bowl for bloodletting. This is medicine in the Middle Ages, and it rests on one big idea, the 4 humors. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Illness, they say, comes from imbalance. Too much blood? They'll drain you. Too much phlegm? Expect purges or vomit-inducing potions. It sounds absurd, yet people swore by it for centuries. You watch as the barber surgeon presses a leech onto the man's arm. It wriggles, latches, and begins its slow feast. This will balance the humors, the barber insists. The patient closes his eyes, hoping relief will follow. You shiver. Broken bones? Expect splints of wood and cloth, maybe a poultice of herbs. Headache? Powdered unicorn horn. except it's really gnarled tusk, worth its weight in gold. Toothache? Have it yanked out with iron pliers, no anesthetic. Surgery? Brace yourself. They have knives, saws, and hot irons to cauterize wounds. You're not sure what's worse, the pain or the risk of infection afterward. For the wealthy, remedies are elaborate. Exotic herbs from the East, crushed pearls mixed into wine, charms sewn into clothing. For the poor, garlic, onion poultices, or prayers. Some monasteries keep herb gardens, cultivating sage, rosemary, and lavender for healing. Monks record recipes in careful Latin, passing knowledge down through generations. You glance at shelves of jars, powders, dried roots, strange liquids, each labeled in shaky script. Some might help, others might kill. Opium is known, used for pain, but in risky doses. Mandrake root belladonna, foxglove, plants both powerful and poisonous. It's trial and error, with your body as experiment. Yet amid the superstition, there is progress. Some surgeons develop skill in stitching wounds, setting bones, even performing crude trepanation, drilling holes in skulls to relieve pressure. Many survive, though many do not. The survival rate isn't comforting. As you leave, you can't shake the barber's cheery words. Come back any time. I sharpen knives and cure fevers. In this world, you'd better pray you never need either. Outside, the air feels cleaner, though the streets are still crowded. You watch people pass and realize this society runs on strict order, where you're born determines everything. At the top, the king. His word is law, his crown divine. Below him, nobles, lords and ladies with castles, land, and serfs to work it. Knights swear fealty, bound by oaths of loyalty, riding out to fight when called. The church towers above all, bishops and abbots wielding power not just over souls, but over lands and armies. And then the majority, peasants, they till fields, grind grain, pay taxes, and owe service. Bound by feudal duty, they can't simply pack up and leave. Freedom is rare and life is hard. You imagine yourself in their shoes, bent over fields from dawn until dusk, hands raw, back aching. Townsfolk fare slightly better. Bakers, blacksmiths, weavers, craftsmen who join guilds, regulating their trades. Merchants rise slowly, some growing wealthy enough to challenge nobles. But status isn't easily shaken. Birth chains you, like invisible iron. Everywhere, clothing shows rank. Nobles draped in velvet, fur, and silk. Bright dyes signal wealth, especially deep reds and purples. Peasants wear wool, coarse, practical, often dull brown or gray. You glance at your own tunic and sigh. No one mistakes you for rich. The hierarchy isn't just wealth, it's law. Step out of place, and punishment follows. Bow too shallow to a lord. Speak out of turn to a priest. Fail to pay taxes. Each invites trouble. You tread carefully, eyes lowered, heart steady. The weight of this order presses down. Fair or not, it keeps the world turning. And for you, a traveler out of time, it's both fascinating and suffocating. Bells toll from the great stone church, echoing across the town. Everyone pauses, work halts, conversations end. Faith isn't just belief here, it's the backbone of daily life. You step inside the church. The air is cool, thick with incense. Candles flicker, casting shadows on painted saints. Latin chants rise, haunting and beautiful, though you don't understand the words. For the people around you, they are sacred sound pulling heaven closer. Religion orders the year. Feasts fasts, saints' days. Life spins on the church's calendar. Lemmings no meat. Advent prepares for Christmas. Easter bursts with joy and color. Every season has its rhythm, guided by faith. Fear is part of it too. Sin, confession, penance, purgatory, hell. The priest's voice is stern as he warns of damnation. For the literate majority, stained glass and painted walls tell the stories. Noah, Moses, Christ, Mary. Faith is visual, audible, tangible. But whispers spread outside the church. Folk beliefs linger, charms, amulets, healing stones. Some wear tiny relics, a saint's bone or scrap of cloth, believed to protect from plague. Others mutter spells or leave offerings at sacred wells. Christianity blends with older beliefs, a tapestry of faith. You kneel more for safety than conviction and cross yourself. Here, religion isn't optional, it's survival. To doubt openly is dangerous. To defy it, fatal. Later, you wander into marketplace where a crowd gathers. At the center, a man in stocks grimaces as children throw rotten vegetables. Punishment here is public, meant to shame. Justice is swift, brutal, and uneven. Steal bread, lose a hand. Insult a noble, risk hanging. Crimes range from petty theft to treason, punishable by whipping, branding, or execution. Torture, extract confessions, whether true or not. Trials often rely on ordeals. Plunge a hand into boiling water. If it heals clean, you're innocent. Sink or float in water, God would decide your guilt. Rational? No. But in a world where divine will is law, it makes a certain grim sense. For nobles, justice is gentler. A fine, perhaps exile. For peasants, the gallows. You realize quickly, fairness depends on birth, not truth. The man in stock slumps, pelted again. Laughter rises around him. Justice, in this world, is spectacle, and you, uncomfortably, are part of the audience. You step into a peasant's home. It's small, dark, smoky, walls of wattle and daub, roof of thatch. A single room served for cooking, eating, sleeping. Chickens scratch underfoot. The hearth smolders, filling the air with smoke. Beds? Straw mattresses, crawling with fleas. Blankets of wool, heavy and scratchy. Privacy? None. Families sleep together, warmed against cold nights. Wealthier homes have separate chambers, even feather beds, but for most, comfort is scarce. Furniture is simple. Stools, benches, a table. Light comes from rushes dipped in fat, sputtering and dim. You sit, shifting on a rough bench, and realize luxury is relative. Here, survival is enough. Day begins with sunrise, ends with sunset. Work fills the hours in between. Peasants labor in fields, plowing, planting, harvesting. Tools are wooden, heavy, inefficient. Hands blister, backs bend. Every season demands something. Sowing in spring, harvesting in summer. Threshing in autumn, mending in winter. Craftsmen hammer, weave, bake. Apprentices learn for years under masters, bound by guild rules. Merchants haggle, trading wool, salt, spices. Nobles oversee estates, but often leave management to stewards. Knights train in arms, joust in tournaments, march to war. Work is endless, but it sustains. You join briefly, hoe in hand, sweat on your brow. The rhythm of labor is steady, hypnotic, hard but grounding. Even in hardship, people crave joy. Festivals fill the year, music, dancing, feasts. Jugglers, acrobats, traveling players bring laughter. Fairs buzz with games, races, contests of strength. Ale flows, songs rise, bonfires blaze. Inside taverns, dice roll, songs echo, stories flow. Knights joust, nobles hunt, children play with carved wooden toys. Evenings bring storytelling by firelight, tales of heroes, saints, monsters. You smile, realizing laughter thrives even in struggle. Joy, brief and bright, shines here too. Back to reality. The smell. Streets reek of waste. Chamber pots emptied into gutters. Rats scurry. Dogs fight over scraps. Bathing is rare, once a week, once a month, or less. Soap exists, but is harsh, scarce. Public bathhouses exist, but suspicion grows. Sinful places, people say. Plague makes matters worse. Fear breeding avoidance. Instead, perfumes, herbs, and linen shifts change more often than baths. Teeth? Wooden picks, cloth rubs. Bodies? Perfume pouches, sprigs of herbs. Cleanliness is relative, and sickness spreads easily. You hear horns. Soldiers march, banner snapping. War is constant, land, power, faith. Armies clash in fields, knights in armor, peasants with spears. Sieges drag on, hunger-gnawing defenders. Castles rise, stone fortresses of power. Violence a spectacle. Executions, raids, duels. Death is common, glory rare. You watch uneasy as men sharpen swords. In this world, war never sleeps. In homes, women manage everything. Cooking, children, spinning, weaving. On farms, they work fields alongside men. Some join guilds, run businesses, even brew ale. Widows hold surprising independence. Noble women oversee estates, arrange marriages, weave alliances. Queens wield power, sometimes ruling outright. But limits remain. Obedience is expected, voices muted. Yet strength shines through, silent, steady, shaping lives as much as kings and lords. Finally, you find yourself in a churchyard. Graves scatter the ground, carved stones leaning. Death is constant here. Plague, famine, childbirth, war. Life is fragile, short, uncertain. But hope lies in belief. Heaven, hell, purgatory, guiding souls beyond. Funerals read prayers, bells, candles, incense. The living mourn. The church promises eternity. You pause, staring at flickering candles. For all its hardship, this world clings to hope beyond the grave. And so, your day in the Middle Ages draws to a close. You step away from the churchyard, the fading sun casting long shadows across crooked streets. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, a tavern erupts in laughter. The air cools, the fires dim, and the town grows quiet. Life slows, people retreating to their homes, humble or grand, smoky or stone. Behind wooden shutters, families huddle close, the day's labor finished. Prayers whispered, dreams waiting. You lie down on a straw bed, the smell of smoke clinging to your clothes. Outside, the night deepens, stars scatter across the sky like ancient lanterns. The world feels at once harsh and simple, rough bread, steady labor, heavy faith. But in the silence, there is also peace. The Middle Ages were not kind. Disease, war, hunger, and fear stalked every corner. Yet within them lived laughter, love, resilience. Children played in dusty streets, couples whispered in corners, farmers sang in fields. Amid darkness, sparks of light endured. You breathe slowly, eyelids heavy, the weight of centuries pressing gently over you. The noise of the day fades. The hammering of smiths, the tolling of bells, the clatter of markets. In its place comes stillness, soft and soothing. Let it carry you. Drift with it. Let the cobblestones dissolve, the torches dim, the voices fade into quiet. The medieval town melts away, leaving only the rhythm of your breath, steady and calm. Sleep now, safe and far from plague and hunger. Sleep while history. If you enjoyed tonight's journey through medieval Europe, take a moment, when you wake up or when you're nice and relaxed, to drop a comment about which part of this story surprised you the most. And if you like more nights like this, please share, and subscribe. It really helps this channel keep growing so I can make even more bedtime history adventures for you. Sweet dreams, and see you in the next story. Keeps its watch. Sleep as the Middle Ages fade into dreams.